One of the things to be a man is that you need higher levels of testosterone. Men need that space on their own, doing things that are men things. You want them to go one place, at least you're saying that, but you're studying going to somewhere else. What would happen if you were to actually study what you do want and begin to think about that and engage in practices that will give you what you do want? One of the things I say in my office quite a lot to women is the reason you fell in love with your husband is because he is a man. The reason you've fallen out of love with him is because he's not your girlfriend.
Ken Arcega here, your host for the Manceptional podcast. Welcome. Today, we will be speaking with Teresa Mullaney. She is Irish, but lives in the UK, has been a therapist and mental health nurse for over 25 years at the NHS in London, and is currently a private therapist and master NLP practitioner. So we want to ask her a little bit more about that. She's been specializing originally in broken families, mental health patients, and specializes now in expectant mothers. So of course it makes sense that her podcast is about real men, real issues. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to talk to her about that. Teresa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So I want to ask how you went from babies to real men, real issues. But before I do that, when I was interviewed on your podcast, and thank you very much, that was quite fun. You asked me what was the best thing about being a man. And of course, I had to go there and saying, basically peeing in the bushes. So turnabout is fair play. What would you say, from your perspective, is the best thing about men being men?
For me personally, I grew up in a family where I've got 5 brothers, and I'm more used to being around men than women because of that. And I get to have a lot of fun with guys. I do an awful lot of laughing with guys. Guys see the world in a very different way.
Okay.
And that's great because you learn a lot more. I actually also found as well, men tend to be very cooperative in a way that women aren't always. No,
wait a minute. What do you mean by that? Because I thought women are supposed to work together more, and men, aside from military teams or something.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so often women will actually do things that are not that helpful to each other. For example, when you got a pregnant woman, right, another woman will tell her all the bad experiences of the pregnancy that she had and the delivery and so on. And, that's really a good time not to say anything at all.
Okay.
Wish her well. That would be a better, kinder thing to actually do. Okay. And like personally, like with you and your daughter, you've been teaching her an awful lot of quality stuff in terms of hustling, in terms of how to get on in the world, and how to deal with being in a man's world. My dad used to take me to work as a teenager because he used to build houses, and he built the house of every other person I went to school with. So he actually gave me skills that has been useful in the rest of my life. Like, I know how to change a light bulb. If I need a handy guy in because there's jobs that need doing that, are too big for me to do on my own, they can't pull the wool over my eyes.
Right.
Not even remotely. So in this kind of way, I think men and women can actually help each other out and teach each other skills so that, we all get to benefit and we all get to have more fun by doing things like that.
So what was the impetus of, because in your practice, you were focusing, now you're on expectant mothers, right? You gave that example. Mm-hmm. Why didn't you focus on that, which is your, I guess, professional expertise? You mentioned men cooperate more, but what is the impetus and drive for for doing this with men, real issues? What do you think you can get out of it? What could men get out of it, should I say? What could men do?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think over time, men will get to appreciate that, but actually you do experience emotions and that you do express them. Right. And I think what I hope women will learn from it is that the way men express their emotions is different. And therefore, by paying attention differently, you'll have a different experience.
Okay. Now, why do you think there's that gap between, that what was that book? Real Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or I might have turned that around. But so we kind of know men and women are different. So why is it that we can't communicate? There's a lot of things about men trying to learn how women communicate or what they think. There seems to be a huge gap there.
There is, and I think in lots of ways we focus on inequality. We don't really. I mean, when is the last time you actually heard people talking about? Let's spend some time figuring out how we can actually get along more easily. I rarely hear conversations like that because I guess it doesn't sell newspapers, essentially.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in lots of ways, we're mirrors of each other. I'm sure you've heard that kind of concept. That which resides in me also resides in the other person. Right. That thing, whether it's kindness, whether it's love, whether it's communication, that was, we're mirrors of each other. We notice things about each other. And it always fascinates me when a woman will come into my office and give out about her husband not communicating with her. And I'll talk to her about, well, what did you say to him? All right. Well, he should know.
He should know.
He should know. Right. How is he supposed to know?
I guarantee you actually, that's a problem right there, because mind reading is not it's not part of the manual.
Well, it's not the manual for any of us. It really is not the manual for any of us. Not really. I mean, we guess, and we base our guesses on what's gone on in our own internal world, and not necessarily on the internal world of the other person. We often come out with, to use an NLP expression, complex equivalence. This equals that. He didn't buy me flowers. That means he doesn't love me. Now, the reason he mightn't have bought the flowers was he went to the flower shop and there wasn't actually one single flower that he thought was good enough. So I thought, I'd rather not buy the flowers today and wait until I see really good ones that I want to spend some money on that really shows I love you. But we make this equation and it's not necessarily a true equation.
That sounds to me or that type of scenario sounds to me like the basis for a lot of arguments, a foundation of arguments, and it escalates from there, and based on misunderstanding or each person projecting what they think things mean, and nobody's interacting.
Well, exactly. That's what most rows are about, really. That one doesn't really pay attention and understand the other's preferred way of thinking and experiencing the world.
So how would men and women understand each other better? How do you bridge that gap?
I think spending time talking to each other and figuring out the other person, because the other generalization is that all men are the same. And the reality is all men are not the same. One of the things that Richard Bandler observed is that when people are talking to each other, their eyes are moving all the time. And it indicates where in the brain that they're going for the information. So if you're looking up, and if you're looking at the person and you're looking up, they're looking up and to your right, it means that they're usually recalling a memory. And if they're looking the other side, it means that they're creating a memory. And if you're looking down looking at the person, looking down and to the person's left, it indicates kinesthetic, so feeling. And then the other side indicates auditory digital, which means they're talking to themselves. And for some people, they have a preference of speaking visual language and understanding the world in a very visual way. There are other people that have a preference through hearing things. And so they process information auditorily. And then other people are very kinesthetic. Right. And so if, say, for example, somebody whose preference is very visual, they will be speaking quite fast. They'll have movies running in their head and, sometimes it might be difficult to keep up with. And so if they're talking to somebody who is extremely kinesthetic in their preference, kinesthetic people talk very slowly. And they're very much in their bodies and they use very kinesthetic language. So if both of them are communicating together, communication can just bypass each other because they're not utilizing language that the other understands or communicating in a way that the other understands. Wow. So that also goes on between men and women.
And you know what? Frankly, I didn't think about that. I know there's people learn differently, education-wise or academically or even could be anything. You learn in different ways. But I didn't realize people communicate in those same different ways. So you could really, I just had no idea. So I could really be shooting off at one level, right? And someone's coming back at me at another level. And it's just like this total mismatch because we're not understanding that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
I guarantee that happens to me. I guarantee it because sometimes I'll say something when I get back has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, or I don't understand it at all. That's wow. Okay. Is this NLP that you're talking about?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is the kind of stuff Richard Bandler, who's the co-creator of NLP, teaches about. And one of his recommendations is, like, say, for example, because I know you work in sales, when you pick up the phone and you listen to the person speaking at the other end, it's a very good idea to match their rate and speed of speaking, because that gives an indication as to how fast they're thinking.
Oh, okay. And I usually do that. If somebody has a lot of energy and I'm talking to them, then I up my energy, because if I was a downer, that wouldn't work. Or if they're very slow and calm and quiet, I don't jump in there and start talking like a rabbit, because obviously they're not going to jive with that. So I think intuitively I kind of understand that, but I didn't know all the stuff behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an excellent skill to actually have. It really, really is.
Wow. Have you spoken with any men that understood this, maybe even intuitively? Or I guess men or women, right? It's not really a male or female thing.
It's not really a male or female thing. Ironically, in NLP land, inverted commas, most of the people that tend to gravitate towards it are actually men. And a lot of the better therapists are actually men. Though there's lots of women, but it tends to be more men.
Why?
I think because it has a very logical way of structuring communication. It's very clear how to do it, and it's learnable, and it's not all relying on intuition, though a lot of it becomes intuition once you understand it.
So are you saying that women are more intuitive or rely more on intuitive ways of doing things than men?
Possibly, but women are naturally better. Well, we're kind of more gifted when it comes to verbal communication. And I see there's a lot of female clients I've seen that would prefer to have, say, for example, psychotherapy than go and see an NLP practitioner, even if they have something like a phobia. And a phobia with NLP can be just knocked out very quickly. So whereas
when you say
psychotherapy, years. Sorry.
What's a phobia? You mean like arachnophobia or?
A real intense fear of something, like getting in a plane, an intense phobia of needles. It can be literally anything. Needles can be a huge, big phobia for people.
Now that you're mentioning this, I think NLP, I've heard about this being used in conjunction with sports.
Oh, hugely.
Okay.
Hugely. I've coached quite a few people who are big in sports.
Really?
And because it's very much about getting them to think in a positive way, like imagining themselves winning the event or the race or whatever it is. And as, say, for example, they're running a marathon, right? That can be anywhere between 2 and 3, 4 hours run, depending on how good a sports professional you are. So that's a long time to be talking to yourself. And it's important to be talking in a way that is supportive of accomplishing the objective for that event on that particular day.
Okay.
Right. And they also have to be very aware about how they're feeling in terms of their body, like being aware of their intuition, having a sense of where the competition is, knowing the memory of what skill has to be done where. Also a thing called time distortion. Like, for instance, racing car drivers, they have an awful lot of stuff to do in a very short period of time, whether it's changing gears, been aware of the guy in the pit that might be giving them instructions, been aware, almost 360-degree awareness of where the competition are, how fast he can go, where, what obstacles he might have in the way, and so on. And I'm saying he, but because there's not many female motor racing, but because they have so much to do in such a short period of time at huge speed, they do a thing called time distortion, where they slow things down in their mind dramatically, so that it doesn't feel like they're going as fast as they are, so that they have enough time to shift gears and absorb all of theirs and have it all manageable.
Wow. I know that you always hear the stories about when there's an accident, everything goes in slow motion, but you're saying that this is something people do just trying to handle because everything's so fast. Their brain can slow it down somehow.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And it's a very useful skill to have. Like, say, for example, if you worked in an A&E department, I think you call it an emergency room.
Emergency room.
Where you could have like few accidents coming in at the same time, and you're going from being able to time distort in those situations helps keep a handle on everything and keep things under control.
Wow. So just extending this conversation, let's say our listeners, I post a lot of stuff on my Instagram about me doing my martial arts stuff. I do Krav Maga and also teach some beginning classes and kids. For instance, last night was pretty rough, where we're doing body conditioning and sparring. What about fighters? How could you use this mentally to get some sort of edge or control of yourself under extreme duress, physical and mental duress?
I think it was Muhammad Ali, when he was boxing in the room, in the ring, he was able to imagine himself been at the back of himself while he was boxing and see all the muscles along his back, from his back, if that makes sense.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And you can actually utilize this even in, say, for example, a morning meditation, where you're mentally rehearsing the exercise or the fight from all angles, so that you're looking at yourself from several different perspectives all at once. Like a 360-degree zoom of yourself and how you're connecting with the other person and how you're reacting to what they're doing, not doing, so that you really get an understanding of where it is that the next punch or the next kick or whatever it is going to come from. And that you can actually flow with their energy.
I'm going to have to look into this more. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's
I had no idea. I didn't.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, okay. So let's say just men coming in for a discussion or session with you. And let's say they're not up on all the stuff that we just talked about. Someone just walks in. Have you seen a pattern just in people coming in, a pattern in men, the types of things they're concerned about, or maybe I'm assuming maybe they're coming to you because they have a problem already, right? Or in a rut. So maybe, what have you seen? What are the patterns that you've seen?
Well, I think at this stage, I've seen men from all walks of life, from all creeds and colours and age groups and all of that. Because when you do what I've done over all these years, then you get to see a variety of people. But I think the biggest thing that people suffer from is anxiety. Exactly. Going into the future and imagining bad stuff happening based on bad stuff that has happened in the past.
Okay.
And the more that happens, the more they're going to think bad stuff and read up about bad stuff. And it's like, that's not a good strategy.
Well, yeah, because we know that when you project things that could happen that aren't happening, that are not real, it feels real to you, but it's not actually real. And so you're putting it on yourself.
Correct. As Muji says, we suffer our thinking, and most of the stuff we think about is made up. We've made it up. Right. we can just as easily go into our future and imagine good stuff happening because it's the same brain that's actually doing it.
Is that a good practice to do? There's visualization, right? We've all heard of that. I'm sure we all do it in some aspects. So that's the same side of a different side of the same coin that we're talking about here. Can you just purposely do that? Just vision good things and you'll kind of go that way?
Well, you're more likely to go that way. 'Cause what I tend to do is encourage people to study happiness and really think about what it is they do want and focus on that. Because whatever we focus on expands, and that's what we're more likely to attract. Now, when it comes to people with anxiety, what they tend to do is focus, like I say, on the bad stuff. And like, for instance, I had somebody coming to me before Christmas, and he had already seen 3 psychiatrists, and the 3 psychiatrists said to him, you really need to have medication.
Well, psychiatrists, right? that the hammer, everything's a nail, and the nail is pills or something.
Well, exactly. And this guy, fair play to him, he didn't want to have medication. So I listened to him a little bit about how he's spending his day and what he's doing and what the nature of the anxiety was. And he had a lot of health-related anxieties. So he was studying everything to do with various illnesses that he could find, including anxiety. And he had this mistaken belief that was going to make him well. Now, in order to kind of give him a different concept and do what's called a pattern interrupt in NLP, I said to him, right, we were sitting in London, I said to him, I really, really, really want to go to Glasgow, right? Now, Glasgow is a city in Scotland, right? Yeah. So I'm going to study going to Devon, right? Devon is in the southeast of England.
Right. So that doesn't make any sense, obviously.
No, he was looking at me thinking, you've just asked me a daft question. I said, listen, hang on a minute. This is metaphorically speaking what you're doing. You wanted to go one place, at least you're saying that, but you're studying going to somewhere else.
Wow.
So what would happen if you were to actually study what you do want and begin to think about that and engage in practices that will give you what you do want? And then he said, and then he came out with the idea that he wouldn't be able to deal with life's ups and downs if he did that. I pointed out to him, actually, it doesn't matter if you're going to Glasgow or you're going to Devon, you're going to have to travel there, right? So it's like either you take an airplane or, you go on a train, you get a car. Because it is the United Kingdom, you're going to come across trees, you're going to come across, traffic, you're going to come across, maybe some nature, other people on the way, and what have you. So either way, you're going to deal with all of these things. But by going in the direction you want to go in, you're going with the flow, and therefore you're more likely to have more resilience to deal with it.
So let's. This is fascinating. So let's extract this out. One of the purposes, or one of the main purposes of the Manceptional podcast, is for men to recognize their passions and follow them and create their own path in life on that passion. And I'm sure there are plenty of examples like myself that have been doing one thing, but really, I'm trying to get on my own track and change. And you've got all these things around you, responsibilities and all this stuff, fear of changing, and what am I going to do? How can we extract what you're talking about here for our listeners to help get on that other track or execute on another track? Do you understand what I'm saying? Was that convoluted?
I think I do. So how do I get on
to Glasgow? How do I get to Glasgow?
Yeah. Well, study the things you do want. Like, really think, what do I want? Now, if you're not that sure, for example, look at your bookshelf. What are the books that you've just bought, intuitively bought, right? Now, you say, from the example, they're all on photography. Well, maybe that's your clue.
Got it. Okay.
If you're with your men friends, what are the key things you naturally end up talking about? Right? If they ask you, how are you doing, Ken? And you say, yeah, the football was bad, or you end up talking about music. Well, whether you're more interested in football or music already,
Right.
What are you most likely to talk to your girlfriends about? What do your children ask you about? There's little clues throughout your entire life that tells you where the answer is, or gives you a direction as to what the answer is.
Oh, it's funny. So I'm thinking about what's on my bookshelf, and I've got tons of books I haven't read yet. I have to keep buying them, and I'm going to read them. But they're all about bettering yourself, getting on the right track, executing, being happy. It's all that category. I don't know if you call that self-help, but it's all that category in terms of my bookshelf, which I guess really lines up with my podcast. That's kind of funny how that works.
It certainly does. And certainly from the conversation we had, I would agree with that. That feels right in terms of listening to you and what I know of you. That certainly feels in keeping with that.
Are you going to charge me for this session? I just realized we're having a therapy session here.
Well, and that's okay. That's okay. Because ultimately, both you and I, from the conversations we've had, we want a better world.
Right.
And if by us having a quality conversation enables somebody who might be listening in to have a really good think for themselves, and if they even get one little nugget from it, then I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If I ever get that email, I mentioned this before in another podcast, but if I ever get that one email that says, Ken, I listened to this episode, and this one thing I heard got me on the right track, and I'm executing now, I'm happy, it's awesome, thank you. That would just be so cool. That would be awesome. Mm-hmm. That would be a win.
And I think that email will come sooner than you think.
You might be right, because if I'm feeling this way and you are talking to all these men that are feeling that way, that means most likely a lot of men are feeling that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you have you been able to, let's say this gentleman, getting him, have you been able to get someone to go to Glasgow and make it to Glasgow, in effect?
Oh yeah, lots of men over the years. Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. I was in the grocery store the other day, right? Just minding my own business. This guy comes up to me and I didn't actually recognize him at all because he had a skin condition. That made his face look a bit blemished and what have you. And I'd done a little bit of hypnosis with him, a little bit of coaching with him. Hypnosis. And and I tell you, that's why I didn't recognize him because all the skin thing had completely gone. It had completely vanished. And he said it's just like totally awe-inspiring what had actually gone on. And basically, I was just teaching him an ability to go deep within himself and recognize that he is his own best hypnotist, and just gave him a few strategies so that he could actually heal himself. I had him listening to people like Joe Dispenza, and Joe Dispenza wrote "You Are the Placebo," and Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief. And by helping this guy appreciate that he's his own walk-in pharmacy and tap into that, he was actually healing himself. And he's now back dating. And I just thought, good on you. Because he's a handsome fellow. So why wouldn't he go back out dating and get out there, have a lot more fun? And, we were laughing in the queue in the grocery store. It was brilliant.
Wow.
But it is, yeah. But that's just one man, and like I work a lot with families. And sometimes I'm working, with just the mum and the baby. But the very fact that I have spoken with mum, like I had one lady earlier in the year, and she was having a terrible problem with anxiety. And in a lot of ways, because one of the things I say in my office quite a lot to women is, the reason you fell in love with your husband is because he is a man. The reason you've fallen out of love with him is because he's not your girlfriend, right?
Oh.
And women get that, and so do the guys. And with this particular lady, she was wanting her husband to be her girlfriend.
To be her girlfriend. Wow.
And it wasn't working for him. It wasn't working for them.
What would that be? What would that like? What would she be expecting him to be doing as a mentally as a girlfriend?
Well, having really deep girly conversations with him, right?
Okay.
And of course, that didn't actually help him, because one of the things to be a man is that you need higher levels of testosterone, and as Dr. Gray points out, men need that space on their own, doing things that are men things, like watching TV, watching the football, the kind of stuff that women don't necessarily naturally understand. And
you realize if you said that here in the States, you would be shouted down. You can't say stuff like that. Men watch TV and football? I'm just joking, but it's crazy over here. You can't say stuff like that.
But what's wrong with men watching football?
No, because you're saying, well, the answer would be, well, women can watch football too. Women are the whole thing here these days in the States is that everyone's exactly the same, whether you're men or women. They don't want to recognize any differences.
Okay.
The male is being emasculated because any male traits are bad. That's what's going on in our culture today in the States.
Okay. So
but I think,
how's that working for your culture?
It's not working well because there are differences, for one. And those differences that have been around since mankind has been around are how we've all evolved and worked together, people having different angles on things. And that's how we've all gotten to where we are. So now they want to destroy all of that and just have a big, I guess everyone's exactly the same, which is not really true. and it messes things up with, I've had some discussions on other podcasts about actually interviewing women, asking them about what they think about men, and it messes things up with dating. You could get in the friend zone. You could be, the women overwhelmingly liked a man that was confident and manly, but that when they're talking frankly, right? But to be politically correct, you don't say those type of things. Everyone's the same, everyone's equal. There's no differences, and it's just, I think it's just messing everything up. I think.
Well, it just makes me wonder: how do you play to each other's strengths if you all have to be the same?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Nothing wrong with being different, right? I mean, everybody's different. On top of that, not just the sexes, but individuals,
absolutely,
cultures. Everyone's different. That's fine, and then you just kind of, work together.
Well, exactly. That's what I enjoy about life.
Yeah.
If everybody had red hair and freckles, I wouldn't have had as much fun in life as I've had. I wouldn't have had some of the chat-up lines that I've had just because I have red hair. We like people because they're different. And ironically, we learn the most from what's different. We don't learn from what's the same.
Interesting, yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met people from the world over in London. And, it is a very big melting pot of people from all kinds of cultures, walks of life, and all the rest of it. And what makes it so good is because of that uniqueness. And it doesn't mean to say that when it comes to the job front, if you and I do exactly the same job and we've got the same years in and the same experience and the same level of seniority, then I think we should be paid the same. Right. I think in that respect, we should have equality.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would argue differently on that. You know what I mean? That gets down to what I feel individuals are individuals. You might have your sex, your culture, your thought pattern, but what you do and the value that you provide, that's its own separate thing. That's the result. And you get, of course, you get paid the same for delivering that work. Yeah. I don't think, I haven't heard anyone argue against that, really.
Good. Yeah.
I haven't really. There's some statistical things that are being cited here in the States at any rate to make it look like there's that discrepancy. This is a whole other discussion. But there's some things in there that are not apples to oranges that make it look differently. But when you look around, you look at, I happen to have been in the tech world for the last 18 years. You look at who are the CEOs of some of the largest tech companies. There are a lot of females there. HP, Yahoo, I think Google now. I'm not sure, but I mean, some major companies that have female CEOs. So they're not there to have a token female. That's serious business. That's billions of dollars. So,
right.
That's just my opinion. Right. I think that's on your capability, I think.
Well, I would have thought so, because would a company like Google have a woman at the top if she didn't earn it and wasn't capable of doing it?
You can't. It's too much.
No.
The success of the business overrides those little political things. It has to, at that level at least. There's a lot going on in the middle, but you just, no, absolutely not. You can't afford to. You got to get the best person that could do the job, and that's the end of the story. Yeah. So I had a question about, you were talking about the hypnosis and all that type of thing. Are there, this is changing subjects a little bit, are there daily practices? A lot of people try to meditate. I try to do it a little bit. That's obviously a big thing for people to do with health and all that. Are there things that you suggest men could do? I guess it would apply to women as well, but a daily practice.
Yeah. Anything like meditation is a really, really good thing to be doing. And even if all that they're doing is taking 1 minute a day to just be aware of how they're breathing. Because the more we can slow down our breathing, the better it is for us. And I'm sure you're aware of this concept with Eastern fighters, martial artists. They tend to breathe about 6 times per minute, whereas in Western societies we're tending to breathe between 12 and 18 times per minute. And just by slowing things down and just going deep into the body, and just as you're there, just tell your body to relax. And you can even run through your whole entire body and just tell yourself, relax the top of my head, the tip of my nose, tops of my toes, and just even 1 minute of that in any given day, they're doing themselves a good job. But as well, another good practice to do is to cut your day up into segments. So, for example, your family time over breakfast, just imagine that going well. The morning session at work, say, imagining that going well and having the success that you want, doing the same with your lunchtime, your afternoon session, traveling home, your family time again in the evening. And already you have decided first thing in the morning, before you go to bed, that you're going to say something nice about yourself to yourself, like a gratitude exercise. Yeah. And that as you sleep and dream and dream and sleep, you will get whatever it is that you want from your sleep. Whether it's thinking about something good or a creative idea or something like that, so that you're spending more of your time being awake and conscious. And been present within yourself.
I do have a routine that does. I don't stick with it all the time, but it hits on some of the things that you're saying. I try to do a meditation thing. I have a little app and something that connects on my ear. I got that from Dave Asprey. Then I try to do a piece of exercise, either burpees or a run. And I try to make the bed.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And then the gratitude. So I have a little list on a little app, but I sometimes I fall off the wagon. But it does kind of feel good. It feels like you're accomplishing things as well and getting your mind straight.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's a very positive thing to do.
So what would you say, giving advice to the men that may be listening, what would be the first, let's say you're a little unclear on your goals and you're not happy, or you want to change, you're trying to change, what would be your big tip? Like, what would be the first thing to do? Identify the passion, or identify why you're having angst or anxiety, or what's the first step?
Possibly doing something like going for a long walk and just having a little inquiry with oneself. Because sometimes you can go through just having a bad phase, and it's nothing more than, just a little bit of something being off kilter. And just really thinking, okay, or sometimes things like New Year's, birthdays, your children's birthday or something like that, and just kind of think, right, okay, where do I want to be this time next year? What do I want to be doing? What do I want to be doing in 5 years' time? So that you're kind of thinking a bit more about direction and, getting clear, really, because ultimately the clearer we are, the easier it is.
That's true, right? If you don't have a target, if you don't know you're going to Glasgow, you're never going to get there.
No chance. Well, or you could, but it might be by accident.
Right, yeah. You thought you were going somewhere else. But we can't really rely on things by accident. I found that it rarely ends up where you think. I mean, it could, some things happen by accident, it could be good, but to rely on that for your future is a little, that's riskier than, right? Than
absolutely
just taking the time up front. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what would you say if you were to give a picture of a man you would call manceptional? I know it's not a real word. I made it up. But
okay.
What would that what would that man look like to you? Someone that's firing on all cylinders and the like. What would that man look like to you?
Well, as you were asking that question, what came to mind is Claude Abrams, who I actually interviewed for my own podcast. Now, I actually met this guy this year in London, and I just thought he was one of the most gentlest men I've ever met, because he gives off this very calming, reassuring kind of aura. Right, and he's very, very respectful, and he just has this presence, right? So when I interviewed him for the podcast, I was not anticipating hearing what I was hearing. This guy had been a boxer. He had seriously, he'd been a boxer. He had helped Frank Warren with promoting all the big boxing events in this country. I don't know if you've heard of Frank Warren, but he is the big guy in this country in terms of boxing. And he had also been editor-in-chief of the big boxing magazine in this country. And he had done that for many, many years. And then he got to the point where he was doing this inquiry within himself and realizing that actually boxing was no longer a passion of his, even though it had been from when he was a schoolboy doing the paper round. And he had really worked hard in his craft, worked with his brother on his craft. I mean, it was like eat, sleep, drink, everything boxing. And then when he came to that point of realizing this is no longer for him, this is like a little bit too aggressive, a bit too violent, a bit too something else, he actually managed to walk away from it in a very much a win-win way, in that he had figured out his exit plan and worked out a way that the magazine could continue on without him, and planned his exit strategically. And he had then went traveling with his then wife. Mm-hmm. He was there for the delivery of both children. Now he's no longer with with this lady, but he was absolutely delightful in his description of her, and said, if there's anything my wife was really good at, and that's giving birth to children. And he was completely. I tell you, I've never heard anybody who has separated from somebody speak so fondly of them. And he talked openly about the pain that he had experienced in coming to peace with the ending of the relationship, and how he had went deep inside his soul. And because he had done that, he had come to peace with it within 3 months. And he and this lady co-parent together in a very constructive way. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty good for any married, any couple who were married, who are no longer married, to do the co-parenting in a constructive way. Like, from the children's point of view, it's pretty seamless. And he actually said he has the children half the week, and mum has them the other half. And he just said, you know what, if it's a day I can't pick the children up, I'll just ring her up and it's sorted. And then he goes on to tell me about his job now, which is fitness. And he's got a lady who's 77 years of age. Last year, for the first time, took up weightlifting. Weightlifting, wow. Right? I just thought, this man is quality. He's absolute quality.
So it sounds to me, from what you're describing, it sounds to me like he kind of distilled it. He knows himself. I think that would be a good one. He seems to already have the confidence, to I guess he had to have a lot of confidence for the boxing and all that. But I guess know himself seems to be a theme that I'm hearing here.
Oh, most definitely. But it has been over a period of time, and he's had to make inquiries into himself and figure himself out quite an awful lot, really. And he's a very peaceful guy. He really, really is.
Interesting. Okay. And that's on one of your podcasts?
Yeah. It is indeed, yeah. But I mean, I'll be quite honest with you. I like all the guys that I've interviewed thus far, and I've been very, very lucky in that because the podcast is about real men, real issues. I thought I don't need to go outside my Facebook in order to find real men because I'm already friends with them. I'm already.
That's a good point.
I'm already friends with real men. I know some people on our class, they had to, find, because of their niche, they had to kind of really work hard at finding all the people they wanted to have on their show. I just had to politely ask some of the guys. And in fact, some of the guys that I've interviewed have actually come to me. I said, I would like to be on your show. Well, you're very welcome.
So there's still a lot of real men around.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay.
Absolutely. No, I think over time it will become a phenomenal show.
Yeah, well, I think there are some of the things we talked about today. I think, especially that the misunderstanding of how people communicate, that's a huge one. And that seems like something, as you said, that can be learned or figured out, right? There's a little bit of a mechanical thing there. Well, this person looks at it this way, the other person this way. So learning that, understanding that seems possible.
It is very, very possible because, put it this way, right? If you spoke Cantonese and didn't speak any English, we would find a way of communicating, wouldn't we? We would get an interpreter or something. Do you know what I mean? Right. Because if you know that the person you're talking to, like, for instance, I have somebody that comes in to see me who's deaf. I always make sure that they're in a position of lip reading me when I'm talking, and it's just little adjustments like that. It can just make all the difference, really.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Wow. Well, this has been quite amazing. A lot of good insight there, and a free. Unless I get a bill from you, I'll consider that a free therapy session.
Well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
So, where can people best follow you? Would it be your podcast? Is that your main focus?
Yeah, at the moment, for sure. Yeah, which is Real Men, Real Issues with Teresa Mullaney, and it's on iTunes.
Okay. That's fantastic. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for coming on. And
you're welcome.
Definitely stay in touch and see if men can make a comeback.
Well, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, men are almost half the equation. And, the reality is we wouldn't have happy little babies if we didn't have any men in the world. Because I know science has progressed an awful lot, but most babies are still not, conceived in a petri dish.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully there's some humanity that will remain, right?
I certainly hope so, because that's where all the fun is, right? And it's amazing when we see little babies.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate being on your show, and I certainly appreciated hearing how you are helping your daughter negotiate the world.
Yeah, I'm very happy how she's doing.
That's fantastic.
I appreciate that. Well, Teresa, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Once again, Real Men, Real Issues with Teresa Mullaney. Look it up. And we got to all of us have to look into NLP stuff that can help us in our athletic, as well as communication, but in our athletic lives as well. So quite interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
Nice one.
Thank you.
Thank you.